welcome to another edition of Rack and Roll, Future-Proofing Your Warehouse. I'm Ashley Falpash. Today, we're exploring strategic scaling, how you can build a smarter path to automation. I'm excited to be joined by Steve Hopper, founder and principal of Inviscid Consulting. Steve, thank you for joining me today. Would you like to kick off by giving us some background info, and then we'll dive into our conversation?
Well, you be background info on me or Inviscid, or what exactly would you like to hear about?
Both would be great. Yeah.
Well, I'm a long-time practitioner of warehousing and fulfillment distribution operations. I've been in the industry now going on 40 years, as you can tell from my gray beard and bald head. I founded Inviscid, it'll be 21 years ago this year, with the mission of helping businesses fundamentally do two things: to drive down operating costs and to improve service levels in warehousing, fulfillment, distribution, and logistics operations. So this is really all I've ever known and all I do.
Also a pioneer, I would say. And we are fortunate in this industry, I feel like, to have a lot of pioneers and people who have helped kick off a lot of innovation. So in warehousing and fulfillment operations, they are evolving rapidly, which is something I feel like everyone is talking about right now. So what are some of the biggest challenges organizations face as they scale?
Yeah, well, in e-commerce specifically, because there's a variety of different kinds of warehousing and distribution. So to specifically talk about e-commerce, which has grown so rapidly here in recent years, I would say the biggest issues are things like speed and accuracy. There's something that we refer to as the tyranny of now. In other words, customers are really just demanding orders to be faster than they're used to. We're going to same day delivery in a lot of cases, like Amazon and so forth are doing that, and dealing with that customer quickly and accurately, managing expectations and making sure that that the order is fulfilled on time and in full, OTIF, as we like to say, on time and full. So what that translates into inside the warehouse or the fulfillment center, doing that, particularly in an e-commerce environment, means that the use of space, the use of equipment, the use of things like automation can be drastically affected. We went from the world of retail, where retail stores, people went to the store and bought stuff, right? And distribution was much larger quantities generally being sent to the stores. When we went towards e-commerce, we went towards smaller orders being sent directly to customers. A term we use for that is ones versus tons, where the tons used to go to the stores. Now it's all about ones. And so the fulfillment practice, the activities associated with shipping, ones, is very different from shipping tons. And so making sure that, the equipment and the layout and the material flows and the way inventory is stored and picked and all of that is just very different. And then in addition to that, you've got some kind of broader things going on in the economy. You've got rising costs overall, rising labor costs. You've got constrained labor where the availability of qualified labor is getting more and more limited as time goes on for a variety of reasons, which we don't have time to get into here. And real estate costs are going up, and transportation costs, things like fuel and all that, are going up over time. So, battling these rising costs while at the same time trying to shift into a different method of order fulfillment from the old days is really creating some challenges for businesses.
Yeah, that's great insights. Scaling the warehouse comes with its unique set of hurdles, and it's clear that organizations need a strong strategy to navigate these challenges effectively. So that brings me into my next question. Why is it critical for organizations to establish a clear fulfillment strategy before implementing automation, and what risks do they face if they skip this step?
Well, I think perhaps the broader question is automation itself really the goal? Now, automation's cool. Automation has a lot of value when it's applied correctly and all of that. I don't mean to be a detractor of automation, but I think a lot of businesses approach automation as the goal, the be all to end all. And philosophically, I think that's a problem. I think the strategy needs to be, what is the best tool for the job? What is the best way to achieve what the business goals are? And so, automation as a strategy, often makes sense, but only under the right circumstances. So the best approach really is to as Stephen Covey said in the Seven Habits book, begin with the end in mind, determining what exactly as a business does this business need to be able to achieve. In other words, define victory. Do we want to be able to ship a certain volume of orders of a certain type? Ones versus tons example I gave a few minutes ago. What are the order attributes that we have to deal with? What are the demands of the customer, like I was saying earlier? And defining all of that very clearly, so that everyone knows what victory looks like, and then working backwards from there to determine what are the solutions, including automation, that could be implemented that will help achieve that goal. And even automation, I think it's not a digital, it's not a zero or a one. Automation is more analog. You can go from stepping stones toward automation on one end, all the way to heavily automated on the other end of the spectrum. And the question often is, where is the right tipping point there? Where does it make sense to apply automation to achieve the goals of the business, but not necessarily to apply automation for automation's sake? Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it makes sense. Yeah, I mean, just like you said at the beginning, defining that goal, knowing what everybody is going to achieve together makes all the difference. And without a clear plan, companies will have risk inefficiencies in their warehouses. So
Well, and I
speaking
think there's
of,
another side too. Automation itself can come with risks. There are over complexity and unnecessary automation would be a bad thing. Poor ROI, just automating can sometimes increase the cost per unit more than you want. And so evaluating how much automation is the right amount, and then working in that direction.
absolutely, yeah, that's a great breakdown. For businesses just starting their digital transformation, if they're looking to get in this kind of thing, we've got a big trade show coming up with lots of shiny AI and robotics and automation going to be right there in their face. What are some key metrics or indicators that can show if they're ready to expand on those automation efforts? What can they start with that maybe is smaller to see if they are ready for that?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm a big believer in metrics and KPIs. The old expression, you can't manage what you don't measure. And if we sort of draw a parallel to a human being, how does a doctor know that a human being is healthy? They're usually going to look at metrics. They're usually going to look at your height and your weight, and they're going to look at your blood pressure and your cholesterol level and these things. And I have a physical this Friday at the doctor, so I'm thinking about this kind of stuff. And so a good doctor would know what metrics to look at and be able to evaluate, are you on track to being as healthy as you can be? And what kinds of changes might need to be made to affect those metrics in the right direction? Well, the same thing is true when you're looking at the fulfillment operation in e-commerce and distribution. There are some key metrics that really tell the story. Really, overall, there's about, I would say, 24 or so well-known industry metrics for warehousing and distribution and fulfillment. But the ones probably that sort of rise to the top, at least initially, for a business to begin looking at, is one of them is cost per unit. Looking at the overall cost of the fulfillment operation, and typically that includes labor. It typically includes space or real estate cost. It may include, if you really go into detail, it may include things like insurance and taxes and depreciation and all these other kinds of costs. But the point is, you want to have a metric that is a meaningful metric of the cost per unit, which is really just a simple calculation of the number of the total cost of that operation divided by the number of units shipped. So that becomes a statistic that you can look over time and see how are we doing? Are we decreasing our cost per unit, or is it going up, and why is it going up? So that's a big one. Units per hour by function would be another really good one. And you can do units per hour for the whole e-commerce fulfillment operation, end to end, but you can also look at that on a very granular basis. And for example, receiving, how many units per hour did we receive into stock? How many units per hour did we put away? How many units per hour did we pick? Order picking, on and on and on. And then you can compare those statistics not only to your own historical statistics, but also to industry standards, so that you can see where you stand relative to your peers. By like the Warehousing Education Research Council produces every year statistics that you can go to their database and see, well, my units per hour is this. How do we stand relative to other companies like us that are in the database? And by measuring yourself, your business, I should say, against these statistics, it'll help you understand where you are and where you want to go. But there are, like I said, about 24 overall statistics. But as a starting point, I would say there are 4 to 5 key ones, like some of the ones I mentioned a few minutes ago, that are a good place to start.
That's excellent. And yeah, like you mentioned, using your resources that are available to you will help also, like work or any other kind of organization that grabs that data points for you to have a benchmark. That's a great point.
Right.
So as leaders are looking to introduce automation, or they're looking to expand their operations or look for ways to do this, how can they build support within the organization to begin this process to build a strategy?
Yeah, I think, we were talking a few minutes ago about goals, and making sure, and really the KPIs and metrics that we talked about come out of those goals. But getting everybody on the same page, so they're kind of all, pulling in the right direction, the same direction. Just to maybe use an oversimplified example, if the CEO is mostly concerned about the speed of order fulfillment, what is the cycle time from receipt of the order till the time the order shipped, and that's what the CEO is obsessing over. But then the CFO is obsessing over, what is the cost per order, right? Those are two different goals, and they can sometimes take you in different directions. In order to improve the speed of the order, you might have to raise the cost per order, which puts those two roles against each other. So ensuring that everybody agrees on what defines victory for us, and how do we measure that, and how do we track that, and tracking is every bit as important as measuring, so you can see how you're doing over time. And by virtue of doing that, you get everybody in agreement, so that as you begin to push forward with these initiatives, and scale the business, and look at these KPIs and metrics, it really tells the story of whether you're going in the right direction or not. Because are the metrics improving, or are they not? And if they're not improving, then the question is, what levers can you flip, so to speak, by tweaking your layout, or slotting your products, or looking at material flows and figuring out, where are we doing too much walking? Walking is the biggest killer of productivity in a typical warehouse. Some statistics say that workers in a typical warehouse spend about 60% of their time walking. So, if you can reduce the walking by half, your productivity goes way up. But getting everybody on the same page as far as what those goals are, so that then you can agree on what's the solution to put in place, or the multiple solutions to put in place to achieve those goals.
That's great advice. Yeah, gaining your buy-in from your key stakeholders can make or break that scaling initiative. So thank you for sharing your expertise, Steve. We appreciate you being on today. This has been an incredibly valuable discussion. And thank you to everybody else who joined today. We hope you enjoyed our discussion, how to strategically scale in this crazy world of automation. If you have any questions or would like to learn more, feel free to reach out. Our contact information is in the description below. So until next time, we'll see you soon.